Radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Opik. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has unveiled the largest series of tax cuts in 50 years as part of the government's mini-budget. Kwasi Kwarteng told the Commons he plans to cut household energy bills by an expected £1,400 this year as part of a £60 billion energy package. He also announced he's abolishing the 45% top rate of income tax for the highest earners, as well as bringing forward the planned basic rate reduction from 20 to 19 pence from April next year. The major spending package also includes cuts to stamp duty, all part of the new Chancellor's growth plan.
Today, we have cut stamp duty, we have allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax and national insurance for millions of workers. We are securing our place in a fiercely competitive global economy with lower rates of corporation tax and lower rates of personal tax. We promised to prioritise growth, Mr. Speaker. We promised a new approach for a new era. We promised to release the enormous potential of this country. Our growth plan has delivered all those promises and more.
Well, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the mini-budget amounts to an admission of 12 years of economic failure.
The argument peddled by the Chancellor today isn't a great new idea or a game changer, as the Minister said, as much as he'd like us to think so. What this plan adds up to is to keep corporation tax where it is today and take national insurance contributions back to where they were in March. It's all based on an outdated ideology that says if we simply reward those who are already wealthy, the whole of society will benefit.
The Chancellor also confirmed plans to axe the cap on bankers' bonuses. But Luke Hildyard, director of the High Pay Centre think tank, told GB News he disagrees with the move.
We already have more high-earning bankers than the rest of Europe combined, and yet at the same time, median household incomes in the UK are lower than just about anywhere else in Western Europe. So we have to be realistic about what having a slightly bigger banking sector is going to do for ordinary people. There's going to be pretty minimal economic benefits, but at the same time, we do risk going back to the bonus culture that saw bankers chasing big payouts, doing things that helped to cause the financial crisis.
To other news now. Russian-backed officials in 4 occupied regions of Ukraine are holding self-styled referendums on joining Russia. The so-called votes are taking place over the next 5 days in the Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia provinces. They represent around 15% of Ukrainian territory. The referendums have been denounced as illegitimate by Ukraine and the West. Russia argues it's an opportunity for people in the regions to express their view. A second boy has been arrested in connection with the murder of a teenager in West Yorkshire. 15-year-old Hyrie McLean was fatally stabbed outside his school in Huddersfield on Wednesday. West Yorkshire police say a 15-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the death. Yesterday, a 16-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of murder. Both remain in custody. Over 1,100 people were detected in the English Channel last Thursday, taking the number of crossings this year to almost 32,000. The Ministry of Defence says it's the third time in 5 weeks the daily total has topped 1,000. The number of arrivals has led to Border Force officials putting up tents at Dover. GBNews has also learnt the main processing facility at an MOD base in Kent is full. Two-time Booker Prize winner Dame Hilary Mantel has died aged 70. Her publisher, HarperCollins, says she died suddenly yet peacefully, surrounded by close family and friends. The British author was best known for her Wolf Hall trilogy. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon paid tribute to her, saying it is impossible to overstate the significance of her literary legacy. Manchester United forward Cristiano Ronaldo has been charged by the Football Association over footage which appears to show him knocking a phone out of a fan's hand. The video was shared on social media as he left the pitch after a 1-0 loss at Everton in April. The Portuguese star had been cautioned by police over the incident. The 37-year-old later apologised on social media. The FA has charged Ronaldo with improper and/or violent conduct. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now, though, it's back to Nana.
So it is fast approaching 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. If governments continue to interfere with capitalism, we end up in a communist state and we will all be poorer because communism is expensive. During the pandemic, a form of communism was imposed on people because at the beginning, we didn't know how dangerous the virus was. We were told to stay at home. Most industries were supported and the state took over. We became less productive and, in my mind, somewhat complacent. Yes, help was needed, but in my view, it went on far too long. Rishi Sunak allowed the Bank of England to pump out more cash, quantitative easing, and in the end, a lot of people, seeing the government waving a magic money tree, didn't fancy rejoining the capital ethos. How come, many asked, we can find the money when we need it? And this sort of thing was happening way before COVID, though. Take the banking crisis. Instead of letting the banks fail for their wayward lending, which resulted in the subprime fiasco, which should have meant banks going broke, which could happen in a real capitalist state, the government, or should I say we, bailed them out. The message here to the banks: we are too important to fail, and that we can carry on paying silly money to bankers who have screwed up the economy because apparently they would all leave in their droves if they were paid less. Well, I wish they had. Now it's the turn of energy. Instead of the market forces finding the price that consumers can pay, governments around the world are supporting consumers artificially, enabling the price to stay high or inflate whilst producers make billions in profits. Why? In a true capitalist model, yes, there is demand, but if you charge an unreasonable price and people cannot pay, those providing it will be forced to reduce their prices, even if the resource is scarce, because nobody would be able to afford it. If your consumers die because your prices are too high, what good is that? You'll lose business. Even where it is a necessity, as long as there is real competition in a capitalist state, the price can and should be controlled by market forces. So, with the government, or us, Remember, their money is actually our money, supporting these rip-off merchants. I have to call them that because they are. What is to stop water companies or other essential businesses, many should never have been left to market forces being privatised, charging the earth? If those in power keep supporting this, it is limitless. Commenting on a report and findings, Alexander Hammond, Free Trade Fellow at the Free Market think tank and Institute of Economic Affairs, said, "This year, in the Economic Freedom League table, the United Kingdom has achieved its worst position since 1975. We are now less economically free than Romania and about a level pegging with Bulgaria. Worse still, we declined by 11 spots in the last year alone. The main factors holding back our economic freedom are the sheer scale of economic activity accounted for by the state and the exorbitant levels of taxation required to fund it. In my view, there are some things that we, the state, should own and others they should not. Capitalism can only properly be applied if true competition exists. Where there is no competition, the resource should belong to the state. Privatise at your peril." So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? The new Chancellor has delivered his mini-budget to include some interesting tax cuts, a scrap of the cap on the bankers' bonuses and an overall focus on growth. But what does it all mean for the pennies in your pocket? Will you benefit from this budget? With the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves describing it as a menu with no prices, are you concerned about how we're going to pay it all back? At 5:50, we'll discuss the Channel migrant crossings, which have broken records for 7 successive months. The annual total has passed 30,000 for the first time, already eclipsing the 2021 figure at 28,500, and we're now on course to double that figure. How can we get a handle on this? Then, coming up in Friday Focus at 5, we're taking a look at energy. Britain's poorest households risk spending almost half of their disposable income on gas and electricity bills this winter, despite the government's energy price guarantee. While many households wonder if they should heat or eat this winter, energy companies are raking in record profits. So why are the bills so high? That's all on the way. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Right, I'm going to start with you, Andrew. This is true Tory stuff, right? I mean, the budget was great. We'll be talking in more detail about that. But what do you think in terms of the whole idea of capitalism, that we are turning capitalism into communism, but it's a form of capitalism-communism?
Well, it's the nanny state, isn't it? The state knows best, and it's been made much worse during the pandemic because government took unprecedented control of our lives. And when governments do that, they don't like to give back the control. They don't trust the people, and they should. Look, I went along with the first lockdown. I never thought there should have been a second lockdown, but I'm afraid this budget now hopefully marks a shift in this idea that governments know best. When people say to me, these MPs are never doing anything, they're on Parliament's in recess. Good, because quite often when MPs are there, they're legislating, and the legislation is flawed and wrong, and they screw things up. So let's have less legislation from MPs, and let's just let the economy find its own way.
Because they've had a hand in a lot of this, I mean, as you said, in COVID, but they're doing it again now with energy, right? So they're back in there saying that we're going to support you and help you with... Why? I don't understand why this is going on in this matter.
Well, families would be genuinely unable to pay. There's no doubt about that. The energy market is broken. Lembit's more of an expert on the technical side. It is broken and it needs fixing. We'll be talking about fracking later, so that the government had to step in. But by God, when they say the government's helping, no, we're doing it.
Well, exactly.
Because we're paying for it. It all comes out of our pocket. As Mrs Thatcher famously said, it's not public money, it's the people's money.
Well, that's why I see it as capitalism, communism, because I thought in capitalism, the market forces would dictate the price depending on supply and demand, but also depending on so it will find its own price. So why is it that in this instance, where people can't afford to pay it, that the government is supporting it and then inflating the price?
Well, politicians could have helped if Rishi had used his personal fortune to help us, but I don't think he's got a vested interest in doing so anymore. It's actually worse than you say, Nana. This is communism where the government itself has caused it. Here it comes. It's the energy problems that we've created for ourselves with this balmy green levy and everything that goes with it. I've said this probably every week I've been here, but the reality is there would be no problem if we didn't have this ridiculous idea that there's a climate emergency. There's no climate emergency.
I was waiting for that. I thought you were going to do it in your usual way. There's no climate emergency. But it starts off differently.
OK, there's no climate emergency. Look to camera. There's no climate emergency, all right? So people can phone in if they want to, if they disagree. Predicated on that fact, we have now created 10, 11% inflation because various aspects of energy prices have shot up because we're not using what we've got here. Now, we'll talk about fracking later. That is why there's so much inflation. Now, the communist point, the government could have actually let, like you said, the market decide the energy price. Instead, they've meddled with it because they want to intervene. And Anderson made some really great points there. Where does this leave us? If they just took their hands off the controls, took their hands off this ideological rubbish about having to save the planet, then the people who suffer the most wouldn't be suffering the most, and they're the poorest. People like us, let's be honest, can probably afford the energy bills. But if you're just about managing, nothing they've said so far is going to fix it.
Yeah, but what worries me about... I agree with that, but what worries me, it's a bit like the housing market, right? Instead of sort of allowing the price just to fall a little bit, because that's probably how what it should do, they will put in incentives in to encourage people to buy. So, in a way, keeping that price, that house price high, inflating the market. And a lot of their incentives, a lot of people couldn't really afford it, but then there's incentives that make it affordable, that make sure the prices don't fall. And again, for me, seeing this happen with energy, I'm just wondering what would have happened. Just say they didn't intervene so much. Just say they backed off and people couldn't afford to pay. Wouldn't those energy companies be forced to bring down the price?
Not necessarily. Just one thing. I'm really trying to talk about the budget now. I'll hold my fire for that. But with the energy, two things need to happen. Just take the ideology out of the energy debate. Instantly, then lots of the environmental projects, which are really not economic, will go by the wayside. Lo and behold, we can have gas, we can have coal, we can have oil, we can have those things which are actually economically survivable. The price of energy crashes. Energy and electricity becomes cheaper. Second thing, of course, is, as you say, why are we supporting a market which is making billions? But we caused the problem in the first place. Not us, not the three of us, but the government.
Well, exactly. But
can I mention something too? Because Lemon and I both agree about the dash for net zero is ridiculous. What happened to removing the green levy from our energy bill? That wasn't mentioned today. Now, that was a big part of her pitch to win the Tory leadership, and something I cheered and supported. They've not done it. Now, maybe they're saving it for next year, but I'm disappointed not to have heard it.
I'm disappointed I didn't hear much of that either. They should have removed them. Well, if you just joined me, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 17 minutes after 4 o'clock. Now, after the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? Now, the Chancellor has delivered his mini-budget. It included income tax cuts, a scrap off the cap of bankers' bonuses, and an overall focus on growth. But what does it all mean for the pennies in your pocket? Send me your thoughts. Email gbnews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet me at GBNews. There is a poll up right now asking you that. Are you happy with Kwarteng's budget? Cast your vote now. But first, let's get some weather.
I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. It's going to turn a bit colder, especially as we go into next week. Some heavy rain around at the moment across the southeast of England. That should be clearing away. And it's going to be a dry and a bright weekend for most, thanks to this large area of high pressure. But it's toppling in and it's not quite pushed away this weather front. Still around across the southeast of England. Could last for much of the night, the rain across the extreme southeast, and could cause some problems. So the Met Office do have a yellow warning in place. Away from the southeast, though, a few scattered showers over North Wales, southeast Scotland, but generally it's going to be a dry night with clear spells and turning pretty chilly, actually. Temperatures well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. Pockets across sheltered Scotland may drop down to 2 or 3 Celsius. So a chilly start here, but generally a sunny start. A sprinkling of showers maybe for Northern Ireland. and West Wales in the morning too. And we'll see a few showers developing over eastern England. The rain in the southeast could still be around in the morning across parts of Kent and Sussex, but should be disappearing by the afternoon, by which time a few showers may just pop up across the Midlands. But for most, it's dry and it's bright with temperatures around or a touch below average, but feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. During Saturday evening, temperatures will drop sharply under those clear skies, so if you're heading out, just bear that in mind. Still the odd shower coming into parts of eastern England, but for most it's fine, if fairly chilly start to Sunday. Again, plenty of sunshine around. It will cloud over across the northwest, a bit of patchy rain, followed by a bout of heavier rain and strengthening winds coming into the far north by the end of the day. For most, though, again, Sunday looking dry and bright with some increasingly hazy sunshine and temperatures 15 to 18 Celsius after that chilly old start. That wet weather in the north, though, is this fairly lively cold front that will swing rain southwards and introduce a northerly wind, which will bring a significant chill for all of us on Monday.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GBNews, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
We are GB News. And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales
and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you've just joined us, where have you been? This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. And it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? Now, earlier today, the Chancellor delivered his mini-budget. He unveiled a package of measures, including... Oh, there it is. A new higher rate of income tax at 40% rather than 45%, so scrapping the higher level. There'll also be a cut to the basic rate of tax as well, so to 19% from 2023. There was a planned increase in corporation tax, but that's been cancelled. It will remain at 19%. There are also cuts to stamp duty too, particularly for first-time buyers. I think first-time buyers, it's the first 425,000 or something like that they'd get off, and the threshold has been doubled to 250,000. Reform to the pension charge cap as well to free up pension funds to invest in the UK. And then there were changes to liberalise planning laws, which might upset some of the Tory MPs, but on all rounds it's probably quite a good thing. Planning duty as well, plan duty on alcohol rises have also been called off. And the cap on bankers' bonuses has been lifted, the Chancellor said, to aid the finance sector's competitiveness. But what do you think? How does that impact you? How do these measures affect the pennies in your pocket and your livelihood? Is this good for your business? On balance, what are your thoughts? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? I'm joined now by the economist at the Centre of Economics and Business Research, Carl Thompson. Carl, right, what's your overall thought on it?
Well, we've been thinking hard about this today. There's a lot there. I think the first thing I would say is that this is not a mini budget. It's much more of a maxi budget. One of the largest giveaways that we've seen in decades, actually. It's quite a big gamble what they've done here. They're kind of ripping up the rule book of fiscal policy at a time where debt is already quite high. And the outlook for the economy in the short run does still remain rather bleak. But in the longer term, I think this budget will sort of reap some fruit, and we will start to see a slight improvement in growth compared to what we would have expected otherwise.
Tax cuts are pretty much the biggest tax cuts we've had for some while. A lot of people making comments that these cuts are only really benefiting the rich, and that the idea was it sounds like a trickle-down economic structure. A lot of people saying that doesn't work. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of sort of complex distributional aspects to this here. I think what will be felt by most is this cut in the basic rate of income tax. True that there won't be too much here that would help those out of work or not looking for work, but that cut in income tax will have a quite large effect on the majority of the UK workforce.
There was no mention as well as how they intend to pay for a lot of this. I mean, it sounds great, and I'm happy with it, but a lot of people concerned about how they're actually going to pay for it as well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, debt is already at quite a eyebrow-raising level, and I guess the answer to this really will be more borrowing. So we think that borrowing might go up to about 200 billion in this fiscal year. That's sort of twice what the OBR were expecting at the beginning of the year. And that does leave the government quite vulnerable. Now, a big part of this will be the energy guarantees that they're giving to businesses and to households. And in that, they're effectively writing a bit of a blank check saying, we'll cover the difference. So markets are starting to get slightly spooked around the significance of this for government repayment costs. But we judge that this will, on balance, be affordable, and in the long term will provide some gains to the UK economy in terms of productivity, investment, and employment.
Interesting, Carl. Thank you very much. That's Carl Thompson. He's the economist at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Now, the Chancellor has unveiled a wave of tax cuts as part of the government's mini-budget this morning, saying that they're central to solving the riddle of growth. A short while ago, the Chancellor spoke to journalists earlier.
I think it's a very good day for the UK because we've got a growth plan. We're very, very upbeat about what we can do as a country. We were facing low growth and we want a high growth economy, and that's what this morning was all about.
You say you want a high growth economy. You're also cutting taxes in a very unfair way. Do you know how much your tax cut's going to be? I think it's like over £2,000. For a nurse this winter who's going to have to work in the NHS, it's about £450. For a police officer who worked hard this week during the Queen's funeral, it's about £450. How is that fair that you get a tax cut of over £2,000 while people on average income see much less?
So everybody is getting a tax cut, and the situation that we were in was we were putting up taxes. That was the immediate situation that we were in. We were facing a situation where the tax burden was at a 70-year high, and that was completely unacceptable. The Prime Minister campaigned for the leadership on the basis that we were going to reduce taxes, and that's exactly what we've done. We pulled forward the 1p cut in the basic rate from 2024 to 2023. That represents about £170 for everybody. We've also reversed the national insurance increase. That represents £330. And it is a tax cut for across all.
But it's not a fair tax cut. You have to accept that. It's not fair.
it's absolutely fair to reduce people's taxes and to make sure, as you've admitted, that people are going to retain more of what they earn. The path we were on was simply unsustainable. We couldn't simply raise taxes indefinitely and hope that we would get prosperity. That's why this morning I reduced the tax burden across the piece, and I'm very, very committed to that.
Is a fall in sterling good? Is a fall in sterling good for the economy?
I don't comment on market movements, but what is good for the economy?
It caused it.
What is good for the economy is creating an environment where people can come and invest in the UK, and that's exactly what we've done.
This is just very funny. This is a gamble, though, isn't it, Chan? So you have to admit, how is it not a gamble?
So what is a gamble is thinking that you can keep raising taxes and getting prosperity, which was clearly not working. We cannot have a tax system where you're getting a 70-year high. So the last time we had tax rates at this level before my tax cuts was actually before Her late Majesty acceded to the throne. That was completely unsustainable, and that's why I'm delighted to have been able to reduce taxes across the piece this morning.
So Kwasi Kwarteng speaking to journalists earlier. Now I'm now joined by the Shadow Minister for Employment Rights, Justin Madders. Justin, so cutting taxes, reversing the national insurance rise, money in the pocket, isn't that what people wanted? What's wrong with that?
Well, I have to say I've never heard any government trash their own record as much as the Chancellor did this morning. These lot have been in power for 12 years, and for them to sit around and say, oh, we've got it all wrong for the last 12 years is frankly ludicrous. And I've never seen a budget either that so unashamedly preferred those with the most money over everyone else. And I've never seen so much public expenditure be committed without a word about how it's all going to be paid for. I think this is really the end of the Conservative Party's reputation as a party of economic solidity.
I mean, I hear you, but I mean, what would the Labour Party propose then? Because they don't really appear to have any plans themselves. I haven't heard much about what the Labour Party would do on this. I mean, OK, so, for example, would the Labour Party have left the national insurance rise as it was and scrapped any further rises? What would they have done with income tax? I mean, you know.
Well, look, we always oppose the national insurance rise because it hits those who can least afford it.
So you agree with their rise?
Come along with that.
So you agree with that?
We also have been arguing for almost a year now that the massive profits that the energy companies have been making need to be channeled into supporting those who are really struggling with their fuel bills, and the government have belatedly come along with that as well. The difference is we've actually explained how we're going to pay for it. This government haven't said a word on that.
Well, they have windfall taxed once. I mean, so that has happened. And, I mean, the Conservative Party have been known to do that as well. It's been done a few times whilst they've been in power. So they've done it once. They might be being cautious about doing it too much because, obviously, it does have a negative impact. If you overtax people, it might deter investment. That would be their argument as well. Rachel Reeve pointed out that there was lower growth, lower investment and lower productivity during the last 12 years of Tory rule. But did Labour do much better? I mean, there was the financial crash, wasn't there, in 2007?
Well, I think it's widely recognised that that was a global banking failure, not anything to do with the UK government. And preceding that, we had, on average, 2 to 2.5% growth throughout the entirety of the Labour government. This is now what this government are saying is their big target. I mean, we managed it pretty comfortably when we were in power last time without all this drastic tax cutting stuff that we're hearing today. So it can be done. It just needs a sensible government in charge.
You mentioned the global banking scandal, but we've had a pandemic. So that, I mean, each issue has created a situation. I mean, the pandemic was huge. It's unprecedented in my lifetime and in most of our lifetimes. We haven't been through such a thing. And we had to deal with that. And literally everyone, well, there's a large proportion of people who had to be paid whilst not in work. So that was a difficult time for any government to deal with. I'm not sure how the Labour government would have done with that, but also the Labour Party would have kept people locked down for longer, so this crisis would have been worse, surely. Surely they did the right thing in supporting people. Obviously, we're in a mess because of it, but surely they did the right thing.
Well, there's no evidence for what you've just said that we would keep people locked down for longer. I'm afraid that's one of the myths that's being perpetuated by the Conservative Party. What I think we would have done is actually locked down sooner so we could have got out quicker and stopped the spread of the virus. That was clearly something we were saying on various occasions, actually following what the scientific advisors were recommending, but the government were ignoring.
Starmer himself said it. I mean, I was pretty sure that he was the one that was suggested that we should still be in lockdown, and that is the evidence that I'm putting forward to you. But anyway, Justin, it's so good to talk to you, and I appreciate you coming on and talking about it as well. It's really good to speak to you. Thank you very much. That's Justin Matters. He's a Shadow Minister for Employment Rights. Well, this is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come. We'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Opik. And then at 5 o'clock in Friday Focus, Britain's poorest households risk spending almost half of their disposable income on gas and electricity bills this winter, despite the government's energy price guarantee. Now, while many households wonder if they should heat or eat this winter, energy companies are raking in record profits. So why does it feel like the taxpayer is being forced to foot the bill? First, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has unveiled the largest series of tax cuts in 50 years as part of the government's mini-budget. Kwasi Kwarteng told the Commons he plans to cut household energy bills by an expected £1,400 this year as part of a £60 billion energy package. He also announced he's abolishing the 45% top rate of income tax for the highest earners, as well as bringing forward the planned basic rate reduction from 20% to 19% from April next year. The major spending package also includes cuts to stamp duty, all part of the new Chancellor's growth plan.
Today, we have cut stamp duty. We have allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax and national insurance for millions of workers. We are securing our place in a fiercely competitive global economy with lower rates of corporation tax and lower rates of personal tax. We promised to prioritise growth, Mr. Speaker. We promised a new approach for a new era. We promised to release the enormous potential of this country. Our growth plan has delivered all those promises and more.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the mini-budget is nothing new.
Can I thank the Chancellor on his comprehensive demolition of the record of the last 12 years. Their record, their failure, their vicious circle of stagnation. The Chancellor has confirmed that the costs of the energy price cap will be funded by borrowing, leaving the eye-watering windfall profits of the energy giants untaxed.
Manchester United football player Cristiano Ronaldo has been charged with improper and/or violent behaviour by the Football Association. It's after video footage emerged on social media which appears to show him knocking a phone out of a fan's hand after a match in April. The 37-year-old has apologised for his outburst. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
So welcome. This is GB News. It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. And we return to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? Now, the Chancellor of the Exchequer has delivered his 2022 mini-budget. It's quite a big budget, actually. It's all an attempt to address concerns surrounding the ongoing cost of living crisis. Now, while significant tax cuts were already predicted ahead of the crucial economic update, many people across the country may have been surprised by the sheer extent of the measures announced by the Chancellor across the board, which included energy, lending, bankers' bonuses, caps and axing corporation taxes and things like that, the hike itself. But how does this impact you? How do these measures affect the pennies in your pocket and your livelihood if you are a business? So for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, are you happy with the new mini-budget? Before we speak to my panel, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Greg says it's a gamble. If companies and the rich folk all go out and spend it, it might boost growth. Excited to see how it plays out. That's exactly what I said. Richard says, for me, it's all about balance. I understand that the more money brought in to the UK, the more prosperity, but I don't see it relating directly to me anytime soon. And Chris says, I'm happy with the majority of the mini-budget. Lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses seems unfair. Well, let's see what my panel think of that, because I'm joined by consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Apik. Right, I'll start with you, Lembit, because I started with Andrew last time. Kwasi Kwarteng's budget?
If you're an old-fashioned One Nation Tory, it's fantastic. If you're earning £1 million a year, you'll make about £50,000 back in tax. So for an old-fashioned Tory, home counties Tory, this is great. Probably shore up the vote there. But the red wall Tories, the just about managings, not so good. Very specific example. If you've got a fixed rate mortgage agreed already, so you're not affected by the increase, and you're just about to buy a first-time home, which is about 350 grand, it'll save you thousands in stamp duty. Then you'll probably vote Conservative. But if you're on a fixed-rate mortgage, and I was speaking to someone this afternoon who's got 2 houses, actually, then you might just want to sell them because you're going to be paying a ton more. And this particular person thinks it's going to go up and up and up, and that's a big problem. So for wealthy people, it's great. Now, I don't say that's a bad thing, because I do believe that if you incentivise the big captains of industry, it can be better. There's one thing that she's missed, of course. The absolutely central thing she should have done is to bring the independence of the Bank of England back into the Treasury. The government should have control over interest rates. It's crazy, because the interest rates are a disincentive, completely contradicts the stamp duty rise.
Well, Kwasi Kwarteng has criticised, he sounded like he was criticising the Bank of England anyway. I mean, some of the comments he made suggested that he felt that they were part of the reason why we are in this situation, and that they have created part of the problem.
And in one sentence, then they shouldn't have given away the independence to the Bank of England. Bring it back in, control that lever.
Well, he's quite insistent that independence will stay that way. Andrew?
I can't believe we've had such a radical budget. And it is a budget. It's not a mini-budget. It's not a fiscal statement. It is a massive change. And the evidence is there'll be a lot of consternation over chopping the top rate of tax from 45p to 40p. That's for the richest people earning £150,000 or more. It's only costing £2 billion. So it's not much in terms of the government's overall spend. But what it's doing, in my view, is sending out a signal. We're trying to say to people, Britain is open for business. We want you to invest in Britain. That's why they're getting rid of the cap on bankers' bonuses, which was apparently brought in because of the financial crisis in 2008. Well, they didn't bring it until 2014, 6 years later. So really what it was the EU, it was an EU-wide thing. It was nothing to do with that. It was all about a signal, and I think it's an important signal to say to bankers in Brussels and Frankfurt and Paris. If you want to make more money, if you want your company to do better, come to Britain post-Brexit, and maybe that's what will happen. Also, there's evidence, and I'm sure Lembis knows this theory, that when the Thatcher government cut the top rate of tax back in 1988, it brought in more revenue because the people no longer spent a lot of money on tax avoidance measures, tax evasion measures. And of course, the basic point is more money in your pocket, that's a good an honourable way for the Tories to govern. It sounds like we've got a Tory government for the first time in eons.
Well, why do you think people are whinging, though, and complaining about it? I get it that people are saying, oh, the
people
higher
don't
end...
like bankers. They don't like bankers. But they're not all bankers are bad.
But
they're not all bad.
the overall budget, though, like I've been listening to lots of different radio shows, one in particular that really irritated me, and I really wanted to just pull my own teeth out.
Name names.
I'm not going to name names. He knows who he is. It's very irritating. I had to change channels. But because I listen to everything, even people who I don't agree with, in particular, I don't agree with this broadcaster at all. And he was going on as if it was a bad thing that we are giving these tax cuts and so on, so as if we should be paying more tax and why this is so irresponsible and everything else. And obviously the OBR, the reason they've changed the name of it, instead of calling it an actual budget, they've called it a fiscal event, so that the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, who will actually scrutinise these things, won't be scrutinising this one, and they're saying that that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. The OBR have been wrong loads of times. They were wrong with regard to Brexit.
All this rubbish happened because it was virtue signalling during the Blair years. Somebody else who was moaning was your Labour representatives there. The representative, very nice bloke, but he couldn't see any positive. Let's remember that it was the Labour Party that bailed out the bankers, and there's no escape from that. It would have been really painful for some people if their bank had gone down, but there are ways to deal with that. The biggest single thing for me here is, if you believe that giving the most successful entrepreneurs an incentive to work even harder is a good thing or a bad thing. Labour seem to think it's a bad thing, and that particular broadcaster seems to think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. And the people I know who run businesses will be more inclined to do this. One other small thing they could do, they could make it easier for people to invest in this country by doing non-financial things. The visa system's ridiculous, bringing people into this country. If you could inwardly invest, relocate into this country and say, Britain is open for business, and if you're really rich, you'll make a bit more here. That would be something they could do for free right now to make this the go-to island in the world for free enterprise.
Well, Liz Truss has done a bit of that. I mean, the idea was that she's got taking a lot of the barriers to enterprise away, which is what they're doing, and taking advantage of the fact that we've Brexited, and so therefore there are lots of things that we can do. We don't have to follow alongside the EU as we have been doing.
Yeah, and they're going to create what we would have called enterprise zones in the 1980s. They're giving it a different name, where it'll be no business chart, no business rates, to try and encourage investment. There'll be one in the north, some in the Midlands. So this is all about investment and growth. And I have to say, it is a complete repudiation of what's gone on in the last decade, because Boris Johnson's government didn't really do anything, and David Cameron's government just carried on where Gordon Brown's government had left off. This is a gamble. I hope it works, and if it does work, it's going to be good for the economy. Thatcher, remember, in 1981, 365 economists wrote to the Times saying she's going to destroy the economy. She didn't. The economy boomed in the 1980s. She won 3 general elections. This could be the same for Liz Truss.
And even the OBR got it wrong with regard to Brexit, or everything that they predicted. Most of the things they predicted. It didn't happen. So that was the thing. But also they've talked about strikes. She talked about strikes and the fact that the unions are going to have to. They're going to have to put offers to their members rather than being able to continue. What? You're shaking your head, Lemon. I think that's a good thing.
I've never thought that strike legislation works, because
no, but this will. No, this is specific though. Before they're not allowed to, they have to put the offer to their members.
Yeah, that's important. But there are always ways to slow down a business if you really want to. A relationship is better than a standoff. I do think there's an irony in this, of course. I think you're right. Both of you are right. This is the most radical and most conservative budget we've had in a very, very long time. And it takes a former Lib Dem activist who actually trained a long time ago to be the most conservative Prime Minister we've had in, since Margaret Thatcher. That surprised me. Liz Truss has actually overperformed, I think, in this particular occasion. And as you say, Andrew, this is a really big budget. This is a radical statement of intent.
She's only got 18 months, let's be honest,
so she's
between now and the next election. So she's going for broke. The other thing is, you get the unpopular things out the way straight away. You don't get rid of the bankers' bonuses if it's 3 months before a general election. You do it straight away, get on with it. And of course, don't forget, the basic rate of income tax is being cut, which is good news. The national insurance hike is being cancelled. That's good news for middle earners, nurses, doctors, teachers.
I think
lots of people are going to have more money in their pocket.
It's interesting, but Rachel Reeve did say this: the Conservatives cannot solve the cost of living crisis. The Conservatives are the cost of living crisis. That's what she said.
Quite good for her.
Which I thought, yeah, that was quite good, actually.
It's meaningless, but it's fun.
Yeah, why not? Why not? She also said that the actual budget was like a menu without prices. Right, well, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British The Voice of Britain. Your opportunity to show us and tell us what you think about what we're discussing. Where should we go?
Grimsby.
Grimsby. Let's have a chat with Alan McNeely. Alan, listen, you're out there in the Red Wall. What do you think of that budget? A lot of people thinking the Red Wall, people who are in that area, those sort of areas, won't be happy. What do you think?
Well, I think anything that puts money back into people's pockets is a good thing to happen. And this does put some money back into some people's pockets. The government have gone out of their way to try and deal with the excess price of electricity by putting the various caps in, both at a household level and a personal level, and I'm sure that's welcome, particularly by business, who must have been really, really worried about the coming months. Will it work? I've no idea whatsoever. Will it do a lot for me? Not a great deal. £400 that I'm getting spread over months with 60 quid off my electric bill will be great. But as I'm retired now, most of the things that are happening won't impact me at all, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, maybe... Did they do anything with pensions? Did you say anything about pensions?
No, I don't think pensioners were mentioned.
Nothing on pensions?
Not at all.
Yeah, you're right, Alan.
Silent on pensions, Nana, I'm afraid. Completely silent. And the sad thing was, and Andrew mentioned it earlier, was what I think would have been a really positive thing to do at this stage would have been to get rid of this green levy and to cut the VAT on fuel. It accounts for something like a quarter of your energy bills. And if they really want to drive the economy, they've got to bring the price of fuel down as well. For car drivers, van drivers, those
you would think they would
things I had hoped would be there seem to be missing.
Well, that bit was missing, but maybe the next one, they've still got another one. Alan, thank you very much. It's really good to talk to you. That is Alan McNeely in Grimsby. He's our great British Voice. Voice, I've done it again.
Voice.
I don't know why I want to say this is The Voice. Today I'm asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Jackie says, this has to be the end of the union. I think we're about to move into an era of social unrest and crippling poverty for the working class. I'm very, very disappointed in this. Really? Well, that's a high drama. I thought it was quite a good one, but OK. Gay says, I can't see anything in this budget to help pensioners and those on low incomes. That's something we did point out. I thought this budget was going to be aimed at helping with the cost of living. Well, there's something towards energy, isn't there? And they're capping the prices of the energy price cap as well. So
the cap's coming
so that's going to help everybody.
At a huge expense, by the way.
So
and people are still going to get the £400 in their bill as well, starting in, I think, November, £67 a month. So there are measures to help people.
There's something there, even though it might be disguised as something else. There's definitely something there. Joanne says, I feel this stamp duty threshold is bad news. What will happen is prices will go up again and property will become even more expensive. Keith says, in the budget statement, there was not a single mention of pensioners. Where is the help for us? I'm 80 and my total pre-tax income is £14,500. As with all pensioners, my running costs are increasing exponentially. We seem not to matter. Oh, you do. They may not have said it by name, but you'll definitely benefit in terms of the energy because they're going to put some money towards that. And Aaron says, let me put it this way. Life on the Stratford Road is as it always has been. I think it's not going to affect me as much as it is the people in Westminster. Yeah, I think there is a point to that. I've got a poll up as well on Twitter throughout the show asking, are you happy with Kwasi Kwarteng's budget? And currently, 67% of you say yes. I would have thought so, yeah. I thought so. Well, listen, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio now on the way. Migrant crossings have now eclipsed the figure for 2021 when 28,500 people crossed the Dover Strait on board those small boats. Crossings in 2022 are now on course to double that amount this year. And at 5 o'clock in Friday Focus, we shine the spotlight on energy prices. Why are the providers able to get away with charging so much? And then later, this has been all the rage. Should Holly and Phil be sacked? Q-Gate. Yes, those guys on This Morning. It will not go away, and the petition to remove them is fast approaching 70,000. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
This is GB News. We're live. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. If you just joined me, welcome on board. Now, more than 31,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year, after another 1,100 made the crossing yesterday. Now, the figure is over 3,000 more than the number who arrived in small boats throughout the whole of last year. And the latest figures from the Ministry of Defence show that 21 boats were intercepted on Thursday, carrying 1,150 people. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has the latest.
After a spate of bad weather in the Channel, the small boats are back with a vengeance. Along the Kent coast at Dungeness, the local lifeboat unloads dozens of people picked up in the latest surge in crossings. 1,150 people made it to UK waters on Thursday, carried across in 21 inflatable boats. It's taken the total who've crossed so far this year to more than 31,600. That's over 3,000 more than the number arriving in small boats throughout the whole of last year. At Dover Harbour, UK Border Force has switched the key they use to disembark Channel migrants, forcing news cameras to film from nearby cliff tops, hampering their efforts to document these daily arrivals. A new row of black tents in the processing area has been erected to cope with the surge in numbers arriving. The government of Liz Truss says it is still wedded to the previous administration's Rwanda policy, but efforts to relocate many of these asylum seekers there are mired in legal challenges. So far, not a single person who's arrived on a small boat has been sent to that East African nation. Mark White, GB News.
Yeah, so I'm actually quite sick to my back teeth of all of that, actually, because, you know, it's just getting worse, isn't it? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Opik. Andrew, it's just going on and on and on.
I can't stand it.
I'm sick of it.
It makes me feel ill. It's by the end of the year, it'll be a small town will have illegally crossed across the Channel. It'll be an even bigger town next year. Now, in that leadership contest, Liz Truss said the time for talk is over. We need action. Right, what is it going to be? We've got to stop this. We've got to find a way to turn these migrants around as soon as they get here and get them back. They're leaving a safe country.
Exactly.
It's called France. It's a safe country.
Lembit.
There's a small additional point here. That figure is the ones we know about,
exactly.
not the
That's
ones who
good.
sneak in overnight or use a different part of the coast, because you can do 50 miles if you can do 20 on a calm day. The other thing here is, I've said it before here in the show, I've said it again, why don't they just spend a few £1 million on drones so that you can actually police the entire channel? That's the ridiculous thing. I think I told you once before, there's so much cynicism about how little the official boat went out that it was used to be called the Eternal Flame because it never went out. But the actual fact, those boats are expensive. The drones are not expensive. They can be done. You can have infrared cameras. You can actually note most of them. And you know what? £30 million on this a year, that would make a big difference.
But some people would say that there are no safe crossings or safe and legal means for these people to get across, which is why they're doing that. And we need to address that problem.
Why can't they stay in France? What's wrong with France? Or stay in Belgium or Germany where they arrive? What is wrong with France? France is twice the landmass of Britain, or is it 2.5 times the landmass of Britain? Is France such a terrible place? Why are they coming here? They're coming here because they think we're a soft touch. I get into all sorts of trouble when I use that expression, but that's why they're coming here. I don't believe the majority of them are asylum seekers. I think they're economic migrants, and they know once they set foot on British soil, we'll never kick them out.
I don't blame them for trying, because I'd like to live in Britain if I started out where they did, and we've actually caused some of the problems in their home countries. But that's no reason to have such a disjointed immigration policy. If we're going to bring them in, let's do it properly. So once again, if I thought I had a 90% chance of getting in, I might try it if I thought I could have a better life here. But that's not an excuse for Liz Truss not to keep the promise that, as Andrew said, she made in her own election campaign.
The Tories will be judged very, very harshly if they don't get this sorted out. And let's be honest, if Labour get in and win the next election, their policy for immigration will be open all hours, open all borders. They'll have no limits at all. Be warned.
Well, they'll need to explain their policy and see whether people of this country will be happy with that. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Listen, if you just joined me, welcome. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. I'm Nana Akua. It's just gone at 5 o'clock. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. On the way, Friday Focus, where we shine the spotlight on energy prices. Why are providers able to get away with charging so much? Then we've got my great British debate. To frack or not to frack, that is the question. Are you backing fracking? And later, should this morning's Holly and Phil be sacked? Qgate will not go away, and the petition to remove them is fast approaching 70,000 signatures. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello, good evening. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has unveiled the largest series of tax cuts in 50 years as part of the government's mini-budget. Kwasi Kwarteng told the Commons he plans to cut household energy bills by an expected £1,400 this year as part of a £60 billion energy package. He also announced he's abolishing the 45% top rate of income tax for the highest earners, as well as bringing forward the planned basic rate reduction from 20 to 19 pence from April next year. The major spending package also includes cuts to stamp duty and the scrapping of the planned increase in corporation tax. The Chancellor says today's a good day for the UK.
We were facing a situation where the tax burden was at a 70-year high, and that was completely unacceptable. The Prime Minister campaigned for the leadership on the basis that we were going to reduce taxes, and that's exactly what we've done. The path we were on was simply unsustainable. We couldn't simply raise taxes indefinitely and hope that we would get prosperity. That's why this morning I reduced the tax burden across the piece, and I'm very, very committed to that.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the mini-budget amounts to an admission of 12 years of economic failure.
Can I thank the Chancellor on his comprehensive demolition of the record of the last 12 years. Their record, their failure, their vicious circle of stagnation. The Chancellor has confirmed that the costs of the energy price cap will be funded by borrowing, leaving the eye-watering windfall profits of the energy giants untaxed.
The Chancellor also confirmed plans to axe the cap on bankers' bonuses. But Luke Hildyard, director of the High Pay Centre think tank, told GB News he disagrees with the move.
We already have more high-earning bankers than the rest of Europe combined, and yet at the same time, median household incomes in the UK are lower than just about anywhere else in Western Europe. So we have to be realistic about what having a slightly bigger banking sector is going to do for ordinary people. There's going to be pretty minimal economic benefits, but at the same time, we do risk going back to the bonus culture that saw bankers chasing big payouts, doing things that helped to cause the financial crisis.
To other news now. Russian-backed officials in 4 occupied regions of Ukraine are holding self-styled referendums on joining Russia. The so-called votes are taking place over the next 5 days in the Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia provinces. They represent around 15% of Ukrainian territory. The referendums have been denounced as illegitimate by Ukraine and the West. Russia argues it's an opportunity for people in the regions to express their view. A second boy has been arrested in connection with the murder of a teenager in West Yorkshire. 15-year-old Hyrie McLean was fatally stabbed outside his school in Huddersfield on Wednesday. West Yorkshire police say a 15-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the death. Yesterday, a 16-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of murder. Both remain in custody. Over 1,000 people were detected in the English Channel last Thursday, taking the number of crossings this year to almost 32,000. The Ministry of Defence says it's the third time in 5 weeks the daily total has topped 1,000. The number of arrivals has led to Border Force officials putting up tents at Dover. As GBNews has also learnt, the main processing facility at an MOD base in Kent is full. Manchester United football player Cristiano Ronaldo has been charged with improper and/or violent behaviour by the Football Association. It's after video footage emerged on social media which appears to show him knocking a phone out of a fan's hand after a match in April. The 37-year-old has apologised for his outburst on social media. Two-time Booker Prize winner Dame Hilary Mantel has died aged 70. Her publisher, HarperCollins, said she died suddenly yet peacefully, surrounded by close family and friends. The British author was best known for her Wolf Hall trilogy. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, paid tribute to her, saying it's impossible to overstate the significance of her literary legacy. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon, welcome on board. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Still to come, each Friday at 5, I put the spotlight on a particular guest or a subject matter in Friday Focus. On today's agenda, Britain's poorest households risk spending almost half of their disposable income on gas and electricity bills this winter, despite the government's energy price guarantee. While many households wonder if they should heat or eat this winter, the energy companies are raking in record profits. So why should the taxpayer foot the bill when energy providers are making such large profits? And in the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK be backing fracking? On Thursday, Business and Energy Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg said that the move would increase the country's energy security and would drive down bills. But politicians and environmental campaigners pointed out that ministers have yet to release evidence that drilling for shale gas is actually safe. At the end of the hour, Britain's biggest teaching union has blacklisted a book that tells children there are only 2 sexes. Well, there are. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, so it's time for Friday Focus. Now, the government have vowed it will take action against soaring energy costs with a package of measures costing £60 billion. It's eye-watering. In its mini-budget today, Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng said that his new energy price guarantee will limit the unit price on the electricity and gas bills of domestic customers. Now, whilst many households wonder what they're going to do in terms of heating, because it's a choice some may have to make this winter, energy companies are taking in huge profits. So why, the question is, are the bills so high? I'm joined by economist and honorary senior research fellow at Imperial College, Malcolm Grimston, and energy analyst from the Institute of Economic Affairs, Andy Mayer. Right, I'm going to start with you, Malcolm, because we're in this debacle. A lot of people are blaming it on Putin's war, but I'm sceptical. Why are we in this predicament in the first instance?
Yes, I mean, we should remember we were having discussions about the energy crisis long before the Ukrainian invasion. And it's a combination of things. The headline things are the world coming out of the COVID recession, energy supply not keeping up with the increasing energy demand that was involved in that. A year with very low wind speeds, which affected wind production of electricity, quite a cold winter in a number of areas of the world, particularly the Asian economies sucking in energy, and then things going wrong. For example, because of COVID, we didn't keep the maintenance of the North Sea gas platforms going. That meant that their output was reduced from where it should have been. And then, of course, on top of all of that, the dreadful invasion of Ukraine. But the wider sense is that we just haven't prepared for this. We've allowed the energy industries to get run down. Investment in energy is not the sexiest thing politically. We've kind of done it on a wing and a prayer. We never had that mature debate that said, if we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which I think is extremely important, it's going to have consequences for our dependence on imports of gas, particularly from Russia. The UK doesn't import directly from Russia, but we are affected by the increase in prices. So it's a range of things, but the main issue is the lack of long-term thinking.
So is there an actual problem with supply then in terms of energy? Are we in a situation where the supply is limited and therefore we're unable to get enough, which is why the price is rising?
Well, in practice, yes, because the Russian reserves on both sides of the thing, both in Russia and in Europe, are not anything like as available as everyone assumed they would be even a year ago because of the war situation. And coupled with that, OPEC, particularly the Saudi Arabians, I think are looking very carefully at how much extra they want to produce. Periods of very high oil prices are quite good for the oil producers, but long periods of very high oil prices are not, because then the world goes off and does something else and undermines their market. So they need to balance this idea of making the buck now, but not locking in a world that's going to move away from fossil fuel.
Well, that's a good point about balancing things, because if they're going to balance things, they have reached the tipping point that people cannot pay these prices. But if the government continue to support these particular businesses in this way, won't we find ourselves in a situation where these prices are inflated forever?
No, in brief. I mean, we should expect to see a reaction in global and regional supply and demand come what may, with prices that have been somewhere between 5 and at points 15 times higher than typical prices for gas in Europe. Then there will be a reaction in terms of diversification away from gas and seeking new sources of supply from around the world, and in the case of fracking, for example, domestically onshore. So there is a supply reaction coming to this problem that's caused for all the reasons cited, but it will take time. And that's where we are now. And what the government's done in the interim is try to suppress the consequences for people and businesses.
So in the long term, these energy companies, in a sense, have almost shot themselves in the foot by pulling the prices so high, then making us look internally at ourselves. And
well, these are markets. I mean, these are not the energy companies are not the bad guys here. They are simply operating in a set of rules and frameworks which the world has provided for them.
Well, they are, because they're taking billions in profits, aren't they?
Well, that's fine. I mean, the underlying that is because more people want to buy their product than there is supply available. And the reaction to that should be to increase the amount of supply available and have people adjust to reducing demand where they can. And the problem for households is, clearly, if you are someone who's moderately well off and your energy needs include things like running swimming pools and hot tubs, you can do that. But if you, as you say, are choosing between heating and eating, that's not an option. So what the government's tried to do with their intervention is help everybody and therefore capture the people who really need it.
Right, well, I'll tell you what, should we bring in Samaya Taher? She's the CEO for Urban Chain, and find out what her thoughts are on that. Samaya, really good to talk to you. I want to find out then, seeing as the prices are so high, what is the actual price made up of? What are the percentages? What's in that price?
Good evening. Basically, I think the problem comes from monopoly in the retail energy market. So we have just one wholesale market, which we all refer to, meaning that whatever the contracts you had before with any energy that you either hedged or got generation from, or you got from generators, you are just selling them to the wholesale market, which is just one market, and then buy back that demand from the wholesale market. So the profit that the supplier is receiving is that the contract was signed for a low price, a fraction of price that is now selling to, and then they are getting the profit from. And the demand customer is just buying energy from that single wholesale market. The energy that we pay definitely is previous to this kind of market turbulence was a majority going to non-commodity, meaning network cost, levy cost, and other climate change levy costs. But now is the majority, 80% of your bill is going to this commodity price, which is the wholesale market price.
But people can't really, I mean, realistically, people can't afford the prices that are being charged because the government are, supporting these prices. So why, I'm just wondering why the government, in a sense, are allowing the energy companies to get away with it, because that's the way I see it. I see it that the government are keeping this market high by supporting the market. I understand they can't let people freeze, but there's got to be a better way of doing it than this, surely.
Definitely, government has been investing a lot on developing local energy markets, introducing multiple markets where local generators and local consumers are going to exchange to each other and set the price based on the agreement or forward auction, backward auction at the local level. And this has been developed for a long time, but hasn't been scaled up. One thing which is very important here, still energy is not affordable. People say there are government supports, but you should be careful. Government support is a discount, not the capped price. It's a discount on your latest rate. So you are not going, for example, a household is not capped at £2,500 per year. It's not. It's the latest rate that you get minus a discount. And that is going to be still unaffordable. So I agree with the panel that this is not going to reduce. This is not going to basically reduce the competition because everybody still the price is not affordable.
Samaya, thank you very much. That's Samaya Taher. She's the CEO of Urban Chain. Still joining me now is Malcolm Grimston and also Andy Mayer. Did the Chancellor's, Andy, what do you think? Did the Chancellor's statement, did it hit the mark in terms of energy support?
OK, so most of the announcement happened before the budget announcement today. Yeah, what we learned today is what they're starting to think about on the supply side of energy, which is crucial because that's where you develop new sources of energy. And it's encouraging. So we already know that they've lifted the moratorium on fracking, but that in itself isn't enough. That will get some more gas, but they need to do things like change the seismology rules, remove some of the environmental permitting, remove all of the obstacles previous governments have put in the way. But it's not just fracking, it's also nuclear power, solar power, wind power, and they're also looking at hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. Now, all of these things matter, but what they haven't done, and they need to do urgently, is create a market that will get these things competing with each other and get the price down for everybody.
Malcolm, do you think we've learned a lesson here? That because obviously these things are privatised, so somebody else owns them, and it's not us as the state or the government owning these things. Do you think that it's about time we stopped doing this to things that are vital resources like water and energy and things like that? Do you think that there's an argument that the state should own these things?
Well, I mean, I can remember the old British Rail, and investments in the railways were so unsexy that it didn't happen. And it was only when private money came in within a competitive framework that you started to see the investment of far more people using the railway network now than was the case previously. There are a few things we should remember. We tend to forget, but at the beginning of the COVID crisis, the oil price dropped below zero.
Yes, I
People were actually
That's because nobody was going anywhere because we were all staying in the house.
So there were these tankers costing a huge amount of money floating around, and the oil industry desperate to find someone who would accept $20 or $30 a barrel.
Could we not have? We should have bought ahead then. Can you buy things like that ahead?
Storage is the issue. It's where you put the stuff. But Centrica, which owns British Gas, did not give any dividend between 2020 and 2022. If we look at a single moment in time, we don't get the whole picture, which is these are investments that take decades to pay off, and we need periods of very high prices to stimulate the investment.
That's true, but we're in this situation because they didn't invest in the things so that we could have other energy sources. So they didn't do that. If this had been in public ownership, if we'd owned it, there would be stipulations as to investment. I would have thought so.
I'm not convinced. Sir.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we could put that in place.
Nationalisation and public ownership isn't really a solution to any problem. I mean, it rests on the assumption that a wise committee of planners sitting somewhere in Whitehall and a political minister are going to get together and make all the right calls about the energy choices for the future. Well, that has been tested. So we ended up with a nuclear industry in the 20th century for which we are still paying £3 billion a year because we made the wrong bet. The French, whose nuclear model is widely admired from the 20th century, have done the same thing for the 21st century, and it's terrible technology. So it's going to cost a small fortune to run it.
But their energy bills, aren't their energy prices a lot lower than ours?
Their energy bills are a bit of a mystery because of the level of intervention. So the French taxpayer is paying a lot more for the power prices than the British taxpayer.
But the British taxpayer is currently paying for the energy now anyway, even though we don't own it. So we might as well take it into our own ownership and...
I mean, having made this intervention, that case can be made, but you're still left with the problem that what is the problem you're trying to solve? If it's getting the energy mix right, then you need the market to deliver the most efficient path to a secure, affordable, low-carbon future.
Well, listen, you know
what is it that we're going to nationalise? Because we say the energy companies are making a huge amount of money. Over 30 energy companies have gone bust in the
but they're different there because we've got the providers and the suppliers. Yeah. So I'm not talking about the actual suppliers. I'm talking about the providers. We would own the provision itself. But anyway, listen, we've got to move on.
International companies, we don't own them.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But a lot of the stuff we sold off, though. So we've sold off Waterton and so on and so forth. And just as Samaya said, there's no competition. So I don't think capitalism can exist in that area. But anyway, this will be a discussion that will go on. Thank you very much to you, Andy, and also to you, Malcolm. Thank you so much. Right, so coming up in the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK back fracking? What do you think? On Thursday, Business and Energy Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg said that the move would increase the country's energy security and would drive down bills. But politicians and environmental campaigners pointed out that ministers have yet to release evidence that drilling for shale gas is actually safe. That's on the way, but first let's get an update with your weather.
I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. It's going to turn a bit colder, especially as we go into next week. Some heavy rain around at the moment across the southeast of England. That should be clearing away. And it's going to be a dry and a bright weekend for most, thanks to this large area of high pressure. But it's toppling in and it's not quite pushed away this weather front. Still around across the southeast of England. Could last for much of the night, the rain across the extreme southeast, and could cause some problems. So the Met Office do have a yellow warning in place. Away from the southeast, though, a few scattered showers over North Wales, southeast Scotland, but generally it's going to be a dry night with clear spells and turning pretty chilly, actually. Temperatures well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. Pockets across sheltered Scotland may drop down to 2 or 3 Celsius. So a chilly start here, but generally a sunny start. A sprinkling of showers maybe for Northern Ireland and West Wales in the morning too. And we'll see a few showers developing over eastern England. The rain in the southeast could still be around in the morning across parts of Kent and Sussex, but should be disappearing by the afternoon, by which time a few showers may just pop up across the Midlands. But for most it's dry and it's bright with temperatures around or a touch below average, but feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. During Saturday evening, temperatures will drop sharply under those clear skies, so if you're heading out, just bear that in mind. Still the odd shower coming into parts of eastern England, but for most it's fine, if fairly chilly start to Sunday. Again, plenty of sunshine around. It will cloud over across the northwest. A bit of patchy rain, followed by a bout of heavier rain and strengthening winds coming into the far north by the end of the day. For most, though, again, Sunday looking dry and bright with some increasingly hazy sunshine and temperatures 15 to 18 Celsius after that chilly old start. That wet weather in the north, though, is this fairly lively cold front that will swing rain southwards and introduce a northerly wind, which will bring a significant chill for all of us on Monday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
So good afternoon. Welcome aboard. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's fast approaching 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should the UK be backing fracking? The government have lifted the ban on fracking in an attempt to combat the energy crisis that has gripped the nation. Back in 2019, Number 10 placed a moratorium on drilling for shale gas. That was, of course, following reports of seismic activity. But now, Number 10 have U-turned on the decision, claiming that it is an absolute priority to strengthen the country's energy security in the wake of Putin's invasion. Now, the announcement comes as the British Geological Survey published a review concluding that there is limited knowledge surrounding the impacts of fracking. And environmentalists are now up in arms over the move, claiming it's bad for the climate and public health, whilst the proponents argue that it is a necessary means to an end in order to drive down soaring energy prices. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK be backing fracking? Joining me now in the studio is physicist and engineer Brian Catt. The cat is here. Brian, you got the cream memo. That's good. Yes. Brian, first of all, fracking. Can you give us a quick summary on that? Oops, Daisy, can you give us a quick summary on that? So what is fracking? Tell us how it works. What is it?
Right. So all you do with fracking is you drill a hole down, in our case, a long way into the ground, 10,000 feet, 8,000 to 10,000 feet.
Yep.
You then tell the drill to go horizontal, which it duly does, and it goes through a strata of rock, and then it's actually quite complex. So the short version is you then pressurise through holes in that drill hole
and
the rock by squirting in water and sand mixture, and a very few small amount of chemicals.
Will that push the gas through the holes? Is that
what it does is it splits the rock, and that frees the gas that's in it. And
how do they collect that gas then?
It just comes back up the pipe that you've just done that fracking through.
And then they can store that, can they?
Yeah, or you can put it straight onto the grid.
Oh, you can put it straight.
You clean it, basically, if it might have.
So the problem with what are the problems with it then? Because people are complaining, saying that it could be.
As far as we know, there aren't.
Well, what about the water table? You've heard in other countries where they've done it. So in America, it could potentially the water goes back onto the water table and pollutes the water.
Well, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Because what you do is you drill right through the water. We're thousands of feet in the UK, in particular, below the water, and in America as well. The only in America, is great confusion, and activists use what happened. what happens with the local water wells.
Yep.
And in fact, they're not affected either but the point is with those, they're very near the surface.
Right.
The fracking is thousands of feet down. It's nowhere near the surface water. The only problem that could arise is as you go down through the surface
Right.
rocks, then you could have an interaction if there was a leak. But in fact, that borehole is clad in steel, so nothing gets out. And it's very closely regulated. The whole sets of procedures that they have already designed, they've been doing this for, what, 70 years in America? It's very well controlled, very well regulated.
But what about earthquakes then? Because America, they've got like a huge landmass. They're saying they're going to potentially increase the rate, so the Richter scale level to something, what was it, 2.4 or something instead of what it is now, currently 0.5 or something.
The short answer is the government commissioned a report, DCC, in 2013, and it covers all of this, and they've known since 2013 that there's not a problem, and it says that quite clearly in the report.
So that is a government report that says that there shouldn't be a problem with that fracking, and it doesn't cause any real problems.
And to be really clear about this, we were going to try and put a graph up. I know you don't like graphs, but
we can't see.
There's
we can never see.
There's a graph there. So what it says is that they set the traffic light level for activity, any seismic activity, which they instrument at this level down the bottom here, which is 0.5. The 2.9 that you referred to is a factor of more than 10 less than anything that a human being can feel.
OK. Well,
so there was no...
So if there was some sort of activity, we wouldn't be able to feel it. It would be very little. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Well, let's see what our senior lecturer in sustainable construction and climate change, John Grant, thinks of that. John, welcome to the programme. OK, so what do you think then, John? Fracking, are you for or against?
Well, I'm generally against it because it's just not reliable enough. You know, your guest just said, you know, there's no risk. There generally comes in with a 95% confidence, which does sound good on the surface of it, but we are talking about hundreds of wells that we're dealing with here. And so that 95% means that you're losing 5 wells viability, leakage per 100. Which is a lot when you're dealing with hundreds of wells, and the gas leak just from gas. This idea that gas is a bridging clean fuel is just, you know, it's just not true. The idea that gas is going to, we have to use gas at the moment because that's the economy that we've designed. But the idea that we continue to perpetuate that idea that we always have to look for more gas. This has to be put on hold. Surely we can see now with this variability in gas price, and fracking is not going to alter that. Not the volumes that are going to be pulled out in the UK. That we need to move away from gas, and the best way to do that is to use less energy, to need less in our homes, and that has to be pursued aggressively rather than this almost like a drug pusher.
John, John, I'm going to bring in Brian because you've made a few points there, and I know that he's got different points of view. So Brian, John has said that we don't really need all this. You know, we don't actually need any more. So what are your thoughts on that? He's saying we've got to stop pursuing this particular behaviour. What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, we need gas to heat our homes because we don't have an alternative, and the only thing that can replace gas in time is cheap nuclear power, cheap, plentiful, 24/7 nuclear power. You certainly can't do it with renewables, and that's well known. It's not intense enough an energy source to replace heating. The idea of heating our homes with less heat is a bit of a delusion. It's OK with new homes, new houses, but most of the housing stock, you can't reduce your heating without getting a lot colder. So I don't quite know where the reality
of that
statement
is by improving insulation. I mean, 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I built my first houses that don't need heating because they're so well insulated and are cool in the summer. And our current government kicked those policies into touch in 2015. There are, of course, different ways of heating homes. There's a huge amount of energy just falling in from the sky. If you can capture that, you can live passively around that. You do not need...
But that's going to take a while, though. Yeah, but to do all the things you're saying, we are moving towards that as quickly as it can. But in the interim, we need something. And look at the prices. The prices are very high. You said that, you're saying that we don't really need this extra. We do, because otherwise nobody will be able to afford to heat their homes.
Well, you can heat homes using electricity and heat pumps in a considerable number of existing homes. The research has been done, and about 20 to 30% of homes, as they stand now, could be switched over to heat pumps. Where
I'm going to go to Brian because he laughed at that.
Of electricity gets you.
Brian, why is that not?
Well, we've had on a previous programme here, we've had the engineers on who do these things, and it just isn't a viable option for anything other than a new build. You're just talking. No, sorry, you're talking over me now.
Let him finish.
I've patiently waited for you to stop talking, so perhaps you could.
Go on.
The point is, it only works for new builds, and in this country, we don't need to build new builds. What we're talking about here is fracking now, and you made the assertion that fracking wouldn't make the price of gas go down. Well, that depends how it's managed by the government. There's no reason why, once we have a sovereign resource, which, of course, all the activists have tried desperately to stop us having, because they want us to be in hoc to Putin or Qatar or wherever. If we have a sovereign resource, we can change the laws, we can bring in emergency powers, and we can take control of the pricing. It's quite straightforward. You pay people to...
John, final word to you. You've got about 30 seconds to make it.
OK, well, we don't really know how much gas there is under our feet. First of all, that was made...
That chilly old start. That wet weather in the north, though, is this fairly lively cold front that will swing rain southwards and introduce a northerly wind, which will bring a significant chill for all of us on Monday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis,